We want to show you now President Trump arriving in Puerto Rico. This happened moments ago. We carried it live, and now a little bit more extended video to show you. He is in San Juan and Air Force One landing at Luis Muniz Air Base there, military base. And what he will be doing first is a series of meetings with local officials and first responders, and also with the Hurricane Maria victims. He's there after that hurricane ripped through the island, left millions of people without electricity. At one point, we were reporting 100% of the island was without power. They have done their best with a lot of help, led by our military, landing on that island. But also, we have a base already there. Brigadier General Schultz is in charge of that, and she was making sure that things were running as smoothly as they could, but also battling a lot with her own troops and her own leadership in terms of what they had at hand. No power, no utilities. They have done a remarkable job, says the president, and now he's on the ground to give that presidential handshake and reassurance. We'll cover that visit as it rolls out this hour. Keep watching.
Fox News alert on the aftermath of the Las Vegas massacre. A lot of new information coming in on the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history. 59 people killed, more than 500 others wounded, as investigators are now trying to find out what drove that gunman to fire round after round on thousands of people at a concert. This is Outnumbered. I'm Sandra Smith, and here today, Harris Faulkner, former deputy spokesperson for the State Department, Marie Harf, Republican strategist and Fox News contributor Lisa Booth is here, and today's #OneLuckyGuy, former press secretary to George W. Bush, and Fox News contributor Ari Fleischer, and he is outnumbered. And Ari, good to have you. The news is so tough.
Yeah.
Tough week.
It is, and the president's task this week is to be the listener in chief. When presidents go into situations like this, whether it's Puerto Rico or whether it's Las Vegas, it is actually heartwarming for the victims and the families to be able to know, I have the ear of the president. I want to have him hear what my loved one meant to me. People want to talk. His job is to listen.
Well, the nation is mourning after a gunman opened fire from the 32nd floor of a Las Vegas hotel onto a crowd of more than 22,000 people below. 59 of them never made it home. So many more are still in the hospitals fighting for their lives. People are lining up to donate blood to the hospitals. We're told they were overflowing with victims in need of help. Meantime, vigils are taking place to remember the lives lost. Mayor Carolyn Goodman spoke at the one held at City Hall.
I know that our city has a broken heart. Everybody in this community has been so touched by the loss of these lives and the horror of that mentally sick, horrible human being who has taken into his hand devastation and imprinted in our minds forever a day that really doesn't belong in our fabulous, beautiful city.
Adam Housley has been covering for this on the ground in Las Vegas, and he has the latest. Adam?
Yes, Sandra, you know, those vigils, those comments made by the mayor, it seems like you can go nowhere in Vegas without meeting somebody who has a direct connection to what happened here. We're getting also a better layout of how this all went down. We have a map we've put together to kind of give you an idea as yet another police helicopter comes in to survey the scene. The map will kind of give you an idea of where this is all laid out in the southern part of the Las Vegas Strip. You can see the Mandalay Bay Hotel, and across the street you can see the vacant lot, which is where the concert was taking place. We've also now had the perspective of the gunman, and it also goes to the investigation as how this, as they've said, this man planned this out in advance to be able to get this room. This is an exclusive video given to us by Dr. Jason Huffman from Philadelphia area. He had been here last year for the exact same concert and decided to walk into the room and then basically show this great, he said, this beautiful two-room suite that would unfortunately 1 year later become the site of such a massive carnage and a horrible situation. You can see the view down is very clear. There's no obstructions, and he had two different angles to look down upon. Now back here live real quickly, guys.
Adam, it's Sandra. I'm going to break in. We've got the president getting briefed in Puerto Rico on the devastation there. He's on the ground getting briefed. Let's listen.
And there's no doubt about it. You are a general. There's a reason you're a general, right? But he's no games. That's so. I said, give me a general. I don't want to have a general that plays games. And you've done a fantastic job. The whole team has been amazing. Your governor has been, who I didn't know. I heard very good things about him. He's not even from my party, and he started right at the beginning appreciating what we did. And he was tremendously supportive, and he knew the level of problem that you had at the beginning before and the level what happened with respect to the tremendous storms that hit your beautiful island. And, Governor, I just want to tell you that right from the beginning, this governor did not play politics. He didn't play it at all. He was saying it like it was, and he was giving us the highest grades. And I want to, on behalf of our country, I want to thank you. I also want to thank your Congresswoman, who actually represents the largest number of people of any congressperson in the United States. I know that. It's 3.5 million people, Jennifer, right? So Congresswoman Jennifer Gonzalez Colon, who I've watched the other day, and she was saying such nice things about all of the people that have worked so hard. Jennifer, do you think you could say a little bit what you said about us today? And it's not about me. It's about these incredible people from the military to FEMA, to first responders. I mean, I've never seen people working so hard in my life. Perhaps you could say?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Congresswoman.
Thank you, Mr. President. The first thing is that before we were hit by Maria, we were hit by Hurricane Irma. And during that time, before the hurricane, it was FEMA acting together with a lot of employees. More than 4,000 people were here in the island from the different branches of the military, HHS, Navy, Army, FEMA, and all the staff working together before the hurricane hit. They were here before, during, after the first hurricane, and they continued to stay on the island, boots on the ground, during Maria. Same thing. I think we never got the level of communication between the federal government and the local government like never before. And we are in the path of the hurricanes. So we are used to receiving hurricanes, but never before a Category 5. The amount of devastation, it's unheard of. But during all of this time, we got the federal government by our side, doing the job, with the people here, like you in the military, doing all that is being asked, all the questions and requests that the governor did. The president and his cabinet accomplished it and send more people, and it's continued to send in more people, trucks, drivers, and resources. Thank you, Mr. President, for all you've been doing for the island.
Well, I want to thank you because you were really generous, and I saw those comments, and everybody saw those comments, and we really appreciate it. And you know, it's so important when you have men and women that have worked so hard and so long, and many of them came from 2 other catastrophic hurricanes. I mean, they came from Texas, they came from Louisiana, they came from Florida, and there was no, how many nights rest have you gotten? 0 in the last month, right?
This is day 43.
Yeah, all right, well, we're going to keep them for another couple of weeks, and by that time, I think, you know, but we, come here. Special guy, I will tell you, special. Really good. Really good. I also, in addition to Tom, I also want to thank Linda McMahon, small business. I always joke. I said she's in charge of small business, but small business is massive business when you add it all up. And she has done an incredible job, built a great company with her husband, Vince McMahon. And I wanted her so badly for this position because there's nobody that knows how to build a company like those. And let me tell you, like this woman, she has been amazing in business.
And immediately deployed with 4 Navy ships to get here and handle anything that happened in Irma, and then immediately repositioned and was able to respond to Puerto Rico right after Maria. So the Navy Land Corps team was happy to come here and save lives and coordinate with FEMA, with the governor of Puerto Rico, and to demonstrate our ability to come from the sea, air, and land. Thank you very much, Ron.
Thank you, and thank you very much. And, you know, I don't have to even mention the Marines because we have General Kelly. Where's General Kelly? Where is our General Kelly? He likes to keep a low profile. Look at him sitting in the back. But boy, is he watching. You have no idea how he's... General Kelly, come up here. So General Kelly's a 4-star. Not a bad general, right? You don't get any better than General Kelly. But on behalf of the Marines, I'll tell you, they've done some job, General. Now, can we also mention Army, and can we also mention some people that I really got to know and respect even more in Texas, and that's the Coast Guard. What a job. the Coast Guard has done throughout this whole ordeal. I mean, they would go right into the middle of that. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't want to be doing it, but I want to thank everybody. I want to thank the Coast Guard. They are special, special, very brave people. And a lot of people got to see the real Coast Guard during this incredible trouble. And especially, I think, here and in Texas was incredible what they did. So thank you all very much. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Really appreciate it. Would like to say something on behalf of your men and women?
So I'm representing the Air Force.
I know.
Go long for you, Tom, right now.
Tremendous team effort, partnering with FEMA and Northcom, providing support not only but then also to U.S. Virgin Islands and then to Puerto Rico specifically. Trying to open up an airfield to get, as an island, to get the majority of the supplies in initially with the people and personnel setting up across the island so we can set up logistic networks so we can really get to the people that are the most hurt and devastated by the catastrophe experience.
And the runways now are pretty open.
Yes, sir. We got four major runways that are fully open and operational. We've flown about 700 plus strategic aerial sorties to and from the coast here on the island of Puerto Rico to provide life-sustaining support.
Amazing job. Amazing job. So amazing that we're ordering hundreds of millions of dollars worth of new airplanes for the Air Force, especially the F-35. Do you like the F-35?
It's a game-changing, technological, awesome airplane.
I said, how does it do it in fights? And how do they do in fights with the F-35? I said, we do very well. You can't see it. You can't see it. So it's hard to fight a plane that you can't see, right?
Sure, we like that.
But that's an expensive plane that you can't see. And as you probably heard, we cut the price very substantially. Something that other administrations would never have done, that I can tell you. So thank you very much. Where's the Coast Guard? Who can speak on behalf of the Coast Guard? Who can speak? Where is our Coast Guard representative? Come here. Get over here. Come here. Come here, my man. On behalf of the Coast Guard, just say a few words. People have been amazing. Go ahead.
I don't think there's anything that the men and women of the Coast Guard would rather do than help the people of Puerto Rico, our fellow American citizens. For us, this is what we get to do on a daily basis, and getting to help our fellow citizens is just what our duty is all about. So it's our pleasure to be here, sir.
Well, you know, in Texas, it came in, it did devastation, then went right out into the coast. Then it came in and out. It came in 3 times. It would load up with water and come in. Nobody's ever seen water like that. And the Coast Guard would follow it. It goes in, and they'd be right behind it, and then they'd move. They saved 16,000 lives in Texas. 16, hard to believe. 16 between the helicopters and all of them. But the Coast Guard itself saved, in Texas, 16,000 lives. And they went right through that hurricane, and there aren't too many people who would have done it, believe me. Would you thank everybody for
Yes,
me?
sir.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Say a few words. Please, say a few words. Customs and Border Protection. Say a few words, please. Don't be shy. What I would like to do, you want to stand up? Go ahead. That's okay. Stand up. Go ahead.
All right, just a few moments after President Trump and the First Lady landed on the ground in Puerto Rico to assess the damage left by Hurricane Maria, the president saying, "I've never seen people working so hard in my life." He said the Puerto Rico governor did not play politics. He called the whole team there on the ground amazing. He was speaking at the Air National Guard base in Puerto Rico. He spent a lot of time thanking the officials there. One of the congresswomen saying, "Thank you for all you are doing, President Trump, for this island." Linda McMahon, Mick Mulvaney, General Kelly from President Trump's team were all present. He also spent a lot of time thanking the Army, Coast Guard, and Navy and National Guard. Ari Fleischer is on the couch with us. You have been watching the president and his words with us. And this is, again, just moments after he got on the ground in Puerto Rico. Is he striking the right tone, saying the right things, Ari?
It's very much like his first visit in Houston, when you had an organizational meeting with the people, the first responders and the mayors, et cetera, who were organized for the response. And his tone, the things he focuses on are organizational leaders' tones. I think later today it's going to be very important for the president to get out with the people of Puerto Rico and talk about the suffering, talking about their lives, listening to their stories, that human element too. It is very important, and it's the duty of a president to thank the first responders. It puts more energy, it gives them a boost, it tells them what you're doing is meaningful and important, and that pat on the back from the commander-in-chief does play an important role in the response to the first responders.
Because, Harris, the people on the ground there, as we know, so many of them still without power, clean drinking water. It is still devastation in Puerto Rico.
We had some legislation that was moved out of the way to get our forces in there to do even more. We have a brigadier general who is leading, I believe it is the Army National Guard there, Dustin Schultz, and she's been there on that base on that island throughout this entire thing. And now you have all of these other resources. I appreciate what you say in terms of the organizational, because I think anybody watching this might have a question about why it felt rather forensic, but it has to, because the president is first before he gets that hands-on tour. From what you're saying, Ari, he's got to make sure that everybody's really doing what they're doing, maybe give them a little pat on the back to get them even more motivated, but he had some political headwind coming into this.
Well, and look, Donald Trump is organizational man. He comes from the business community. If people are looking for Donald Trump to be the huggy, smiley, kissy,
he
that's
can
not
be that
his
person.
nature.
He can. We've seen it. He can be that
I
person.
think, and that's why it'll be interesting to see what happens in the rest of the day when he's out with the public.
But some will say, Marie, you know what? He's there. And in times of crisis like this, a disaster that Puerto Rico faces right now, it still can be comforting to have him there.
I think that's right. This afternoon will be important. I wanted to see a little more empathy, a little more emotion. I think praising the military is a very good thing, but some of the praise he's talked about for himself or for the administration this morning before he left Washington, when he said, you know, we got an A+ in Texas and Florida, and I think we're getting the same in Puerto Rico. It feels a little at odds with the situation on the ground, where you have upwards of 80 to 90% of the people still without power. When he talked about being very proud of the job they did in the same sentence as 16 people dying, the tone to me is just a little bit off. I want to see a little more heart and a little more realistic look at what's happening on the island and their plan for fixing it. Not just praise, but plans.
But I also think there were a lot of existing structural deficiencies that aren't being picked up by the media. And if you watch other networks, how many times have you seen this be put in the context of President Trump's Katrina, right? Because there's a bulk of the media want this to be President Trump. Katrina, and I think he is very in tune with that. And you basically have all the elected officials in Puerto Rico praising President Trump outside of this one mayor. But who has the bulk of the media focused on? The mayor of San Juan. And you even had a mayor next to her praising President Trump, saying that that particular mayor was playing politics and is not even attending the meeting. So I think President Trump is also very aware of that as well.
All right. Well, move on. The Las Vegas massacre is once again sparking the fierce debate over gun control in our nation's capital. It only took an egg timer's length of time for this to get political. Democrats actually accusing Republicans of being unintentionally complicit. Are gun laws the issue here, or is this more partisan politics? We'll debate it. Also, we're learning much more about the gunman, the weapons authorities uncovered when they went through his home, and the search right now for why he did this. Stay with us. Where you go. The big question, why? Law enforcement officials are racing to find exactly why 64-year-old man who committed suicide and committed the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history before he did so, why he did it. The brother of Stephen Paddock says he saw no warning signs. All this as we learn more details about the arsenal of weapons at the suspected killer's disposal. In addition to the 23 firearms and reams of high-capacity magazines in his Mandalay Bay hotel room, authorities say they uncovered nearly 20 additional weapons at his home in a retirement community near Mesquite, Nevada, along with explosives and thousands of rounds of ammunition. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge joins us now live from Washington. And hour by hour, Catherine, I've been watching your reports. You get new information on this. What's the latest?
Well, Harris, thanks. A U.S. government official tells Fox News investigators are doing a full review of Stephen Paddock's travel history, and they're drilling down on his financial transactions as well as his personal relationships, looking for unusual activity or a sudden dramatic event that points to motive. Paddock was wealthy, had a real fascination with guns, high-limit video poker, and real estate deals. His father, as we've been widely reporting, was among the FBI's most wanted bank robbers. Before the live-in girlfriend, he had 2 ex-wives. At a news conference late yesterday, the sheriff and his team responded to reporting that Paddock recently transferred a lot of money out of the country to the Philippines.
We're hunting down and tracing down every single clue that we can get in his background. Until we confirm all of those things that are floating around out in the media and in social media, I can't comment on that.
Authorities say Paddock used his girlfriend Mary Lou Danley's identification at the Mandalay Bay Resort and Casino. An online professional profile that's now disabled said Danley was a gambling and casino professional. A law enforcement source told Fox News Danley could be interviewed overseas by an FBI representative known as a legat, suggesting the Bureau cannot force her to return to the U.S. because she is not charged with any crime. As you mentioned, Harris, with every hour, the investigation seems to expand now with 4 active scenes. The hotel suite on the 32nd floor with 2 adjoining rooms where the shooter used scopes and tripods to increase control and accuracy. The music venue, the shooter's home in Mesquite, as well as a 4th property in northern Nevada. ISIS has released a new video today tying itself to the attack, though the FBI continues to discount any link to international terrorism. Harris.
Thank you for the update, Catherine Herridge. Let's bring it back to the couch. So, Ari, as we look at kind of what's going on around this investigation, you see a lot of tools getting put into place. One of the big questions is, what are the hotels going to do in response? And so we are seeing some reports of hotels tightening their security.
You know, frankly, the only thing they can do, and I think it's going to exceed everybody's capability, is you do what you do when presidents come to town and you deploy counter sniper teams up on roofs. So in case somebody breaks a window, the counter sniper team is there to see it. You can't do that everywhere. You can barely do it anywhere. You have to have an army to do it to protect a president. So I don't think there's a solution here for a repeat type of crime like this. You can't tighten security in every way.
Yeah, you know what's so interesting about that? We had on Pat Brosnan yesterday, who, was a detective here in New York and worked after 9/11, and he said, well, you can't prevent this, but you can bulk up the force, almost like a air marshal on a plane. So you get all the off-duty police officers at any given time. He says out of all of them, you only are employing 1/3 every 8-hour shift. So you take that 66%, extrapolate that out, maybe give them some overtime possibilities, and get them to be ununiformed, walking more amongst the public, so that you don't prevent it, but when it starts, you can stop it faster. That was just one idea. Marie, what are your thoughts today?
Well, I think in our country, because of our freedoms and everything we enjoy here, we have millions of soft targets, malls, sporting events, concerts. If we wanted to start screening everyone that went to any of these places all the time, A, I don't think just we would want to as a country, and B, it would be impossible. So I think Ari is right that in a country like ours, where we have these kinds of freedoms, there are a lot of opportunities for people who are crazy or angry or whatever the motive is. We'll learn more about that, to inflict damage. What we've seen in places is people try and step up, law enforcement, particularly first responders, and limit the amount of damage.
Yeah, and the big question too, Sandra, has been all along, how do we just mitigate it along the way?
But with this particular case, the female companion is going to be a key component. You have to assume that once they can actually sit down and question her and talk to her, they're going to learn a lot more.
And the other thing we haven't had time to run down yet is the social media and his emails. Who was he in contact with? We don't know the answers yet.
But I would imagine the authorities have. Okay,
they're in it.
Yeah, no doubt. After his visit to Puerto Rico today, President Trump is going to head to Las Vegas. That happens tomorrow. How he needs to respond amid the renewed calls by some for gun control and the grief gripping the community there in Vegas and all around the world.
Deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history could be a big test for President Trump. He made a well-received call for unity when he addressed the massacre yesterday. But as he plans to visit Las Vegas tomorrow, Democrats are increasing their calls for stricter gun control.
This is a uniquely American problem. I think there is an unintentional endorsement that gets sent to these mass murderers when after slaughter, Congress does nothing. If the greatest deliberative body in the world doesn't act in unison to condemn them through policy change, it starts to feel and look like complicity.
What we saw happen in Las Vegas was just a another horrible example of, people with too many guns and too few restraints being able to now kill, I guess it's up to 58, and injure 500. I just find it, terrible and sickening.
Americans need more than our president's prayers. We need his plans.
The nation's counting on you.
Right.
All right, White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders says now is not the time for such talk.
There's a time and place for a political debate, but now is the time to unite as a country. One of the things that we don't want to do is try to create laws that won't create or stop these types of things from happening. I think if you look to Chicago, where you had over 4,000 victims of gun-related crimes last year, they have the strictest gun laws in the country. That certainly hasn't helped there.
Right, that's Sarah Sanders doing your old job, Ari Fleischer. She was very emotional yesterday in that White House press briefing. President Trump calling for unity. How are they doing with this messaging? Because right now it seems the left is running with a completely different narrative.
Well, the president was pitch perfect yesterday. I mean, with his remarks were touching, they were emotional, they were human. He talked about scripture, he talked about the people who were suffering. And now we'll see what happens when he gets to Vegas. That's the important part. When he's on the ground and he's meeting with people who lost their loved ones. I sat through many meetings like that with President Bush, where he met with people who lost their loved ones, whether it was because of war, whether it was because of natural disaster, or September 14th here in New York City. It is so meaningful to somebody to be able to reach the president and say, I want you to know who my husband was. And this is the president's role as the listener, as I alluded to earlier. That's what he needs to do when he gets to Vegas tomorrow. He doesn't yet need, and I hope nobody yet needs, I understand the desire, but let's wait on the policy solutions if there are any. This is the time for empathy, and I think that's what the president needs to capture.
Meanwhile, it just feels like the conversation has gotten so political so fast, Marie, when there are still hundreds of people in those emergency rooms in Las Vegas struggling for their lives.
Well, I'd make 2 points. The first is that President Trump has not hesitated to advocate for policy right in the wake of other tragedies, particularly terrorist attacks in Europe. He uses those attacks to advocate for the refugee ban, for example. So you can't kind of pick and choose when you advocate for policy and when you don't. I would say this, that mass shootings are getting more frequent and more deadly. And for me, if there is legislation that can prevent one American from dying, I think we should take a look at it. I'm not saying we should take a look at it today. I'm not saying we should take a look at it tomorrow. I'm saying we need to have a conversation in this country about why this is happening more and why more people are dying. I don't know the answer, but we need to ask the question.
We had Orlando, we had San Bernardino, and for different reasons and for different motives among all these people. But we've had these mass shootings, Oak Creek, Wisconsin, Aurora, Colorado, and that movie theater. We've had opportunity to talk about this. So why don't lawmakers talk about it when there isn't a crisis, I guess is the question. Hold on one second. Senator Schumer has just called on President Trump to bring together congressional leaders on gun safety at this point. He wants to have that happen today. The president is headed to Las Vegas. I just scream politics when I see stuff like this. Like, is Chuck Schumer paying attention to what the actual facts are right now and what needs to happen?
Senator, look, I am not in the Democrat camp on this. I don't think gun control is the solution to this. But I do understand the human nature that says after a calamity, let's think about how do we prevent it from happening again. I'm not willing to say it's all politics. I just think people are right or people are wrong on what the solution is. But people have the right to claim, let's try to do it.
I have to leave it there, Lisa. Do you have a quick comment?
Well, I was just going to say, I think in the wake of Vegas, politicians, particularly those on the left, are showing us the worst of society. And it's the everyday Americans on the ground there that show us the best of society, helping people they don't know. We saw a GoFundMe page for the victims, raising $684,000 in 4 hours, hundreds of people lining up and down the streets to give blood. So, in some respects, those politicians have shown us the worst, and the average Americans have shown us the best.
Amen. Drop that there.
Late night TV hosts going off last night. If you stayed up for it, you saw them slamming Republicans and pushing for gun control after the Las Vegas massacre. And they were not the only ones. Did the mainstream media cross the line by immediately politicizing this attack? We debate.
Some of the mainstream media politicizing the Las Vegas shootings yesterday, just hours after the gunman unleashed his carnage. Some late-night hosts pushing for gun control less than 24 hours after the attack, including Stephen Colbert, who made this appeal to President Trump.
You want to make America great again? Do something the last two presidents haven't been able to do. Pass any kind of common sense gun control legislation that the vast majority of Americans want.
I don't know why our so-called leaders continue to allow this to happen, or maybe a better question, why do we continue to let them to allow it to happen? With all due respect, your thoughts and your prayers are insufficient. We have a major problem with gun violence in this country, and I guess they don't care.
So, Ari, I want to get your take on this. We've also had people like CNN's Jeff Zeleny reference that a lot of the people there were probably Trump supporters. We had someone that was affiliated with CBS taking to Facebook saying she doesn't feel sympathy because they were probably Republicans.
Yeah.
What's your take of the media's response so far?
Frankly, as I saw those guys, and then they get in these morning newsletters I read, quoting these late-time comedians, I put in the same societal divide we're in. I put them in the category with the Emmys and the Oscars and the late-night shows that I just will not watch or participate in because it has nothing to do with my life. These are liberal, left-wing comedians who speak to their audience, and then this is part of the division of America. You didn't used to have that take place in the late-night shows. Now it's all about politics. So I'll save my politics for when I want my politics, and I will just ignore these people.
That's the same conversation we've been having about the NFL, the NBA.
That's right.
Yeah,
keep it separate.
But even to that, I mean, but it's even broader that, you know, I had mentioned CNN's Jeff Zeleny making reference that they're probably Trump supporters. So why make that statement? And what do you make? So it's outside of just these late night hosts. So what do you make of that? And then also, does the coverage of this get, you know, what happens to the coverage with this when we've seen sort of the hysteria just involving Trump himself? Yeah. Does that escalate the way that, you know, even something like this would be covered?
You know, I think what it does, it takes people who would otherwise want to be in the center and push them toward Trump because the statements are so vile. You know, I've known Jeff Zeleny since he was a reporter in the local Iowa newspaper, and I've watched him rise and have a nice national career, and I cannot understand why he would say something like that. It's just the tawdry part of journalism where it's almost as if you have to posture to say something that is the most rub it in someone's face at a time of national calamity.
And I would say not just, you know, I mean, you're saying journalism. I'd say it's that tawdry part of some people's hearts. It's clickbait. That's why they say it. They want you to click on them. They want you to say their name out loud. We will say it. We'll call you out. That was heartless.
Yeah. Well, and Marie, I have a question because Ari had brought up sort of the political divide that we're facing as a country. But do you think someone like Hillary Clinton, when she goes off the bat immediately referencing something like silencers, also invoking the NRA's name while simultaneously saying that we shouldn't allow politics to be part of this conversation, clearly making it political by referencing the NRA immediately? And, you know, those comments have been called exploitative, irrelevant, having nothing to do with what had taken place in Las Vegas. So do you think comments like that immediately, while they're still identifying victims, doesn't that play a role in dividing the country even further?
You know, on this issue, after mass shooting after mass shooting after mass shooting, I'm okay talking about policy. And that's not always, I mean, yes, there's politics and everything, but I think it's okay.
But what if that policy has nothing to do with what happened?
But it has to do with the larger gun culture in our country, the fact that we are seeing more mass shootings. I'm actually more comfortable if people respond to this kind of tragedy by saying, what can we do? And on the late night host, let me just jump in on that for a second. I agree that people are probably turning them off because of this, but I also think some of us should think about the fact that these are fundamental issues. Health care, the right to feel safe when you attend
How about before we go to what can we do, how about acknowledging the heroes on the ground? Those that, that lost their own lives to save others.
Absolutely.
Where was the acknowledgement of, if they want to get political, how about talk about this horrible, horrific man that carried out this act and the acts of bravery that we saw in response to that?
And I am sure a lot of Democrats did yesterday as well. We just
I didn't hear any of them talking about got military personnel on the ground plugging bullet hole wounds with their fingers and acting like real-time heroes.
I go back to what I said before, where I think some of these politicians are showing us the worst of society, and it's everyday Americans that are the best of society, but yet we're supposed to the country together.
Paul Ryan said it. Don't let the act of one define us as a nation.
And one of those late night comedians you just heard, he said, how did we allow this to happen? We did not allow this to happen. The killer made it happen.
Exactly. All right, well, we've got to go. I'm sure this will continue on the couch, but it was the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history, but the number of injured is also staggering. More than 500 people flooding Las Vegas hospitals. We're live at one medical center next.
Many thanks to Ari Fleischer for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to have you. I mean, it's an unbelievable week, and as we just saw, the president's on the ground in Puerto Rico, going to Las Vegas tomorrow.
You know, it almost feels like 2017 just hasn't slowed down. It started fast and just keeps getting noisier, busier, and then this week's sadder. But that's our country. We always pull through.
Marie and Lisa on the couch as well.
I was going to say, Ari, I've got to give you a compliment, because I feel like whenever I watch you on TV, you're always such a voice of reason. And you always find like a nice place in between things to sort of bring conversations together and bring it back to a place of common sense. So
I agree. That's why partisan agreement here on the couch.
We agree.
Lisa and I agree on something.
I try to be an umpire, just call it as I see it, and which reminds me of umpire. The Yankees play tonight. Go Yankees.
I knew you were going to work it in somehow. I just knew it.
Well, there's a bright spot. And by the way, Steve Scalise making his return to work today as well.
Remarkable.
That we can consider
That
a
is
bright
remarkable.
Thank
All right,
God.
and by the way, this is day 2 in our lovely new studio. So good to have you on this day as well for that, Ari.
Yeah,
welcome to
what
our
you've
new
done
home.
with the place.
Thank you very much. All right, as always, we are back on TV tomorrow at noon Eastern Time. Thank you for joining us today. Outnumbered Overtime with Harris Faulkner starts right now.
Fox News alert now. President Trump is in Puerto Rico getting a first-hand look right now at the devastation from Hurricane Maria. This is Outnumbered Overtime. I'm Harris Faulkner. President Trump, First Lady Melania arrived during our noon Eastern hour of Outnumbered, and now we are minutes away from them meeting with some of the people of the storm hit the hardest, those survivors who've been living without utilities, without electricity, and some of the scenes that have played out day in, day out, the heat on the ground, how hot it is to live in those conditions, and now the help coming through. And much of the past hour, they were briefed on relief efforts. We showed you a little of that live, and now what you're watching is live as well. We're told there are 10,000 troops on the ground right now. And look at this. I just want to pull back and let's take the President of the United States there in Puerto Rico talking with victims of a Category 5 storm that hit Americans on that island of Puerto Rico. We have a military base there. 3 million plus people in Puerto Rico, and now the President is there meeting with people who came through that storm. Sometimes we'll get a little wild audio. Let's listen in.
Make a hole. I love the hat. I love the hat. How did your house do?
Actually, on the second floor is what I provide therapy for autistic children and promotion activities. I was a professor of physical education for so many years.
And it got wiped out on top, huh?
I lost basically the whole roof and some of the walls too.
Looks like the concrete holds up and the wood doesn't, right?
Yep.
The wood is not holding up.
Remember, 220 knots per hour.
Yeah, no. So were you in the house when it was happening?
Yes, we were.
And what did you think? Did you think that was the end, or what did you think?
Actually, we know the structure will hold. However, the winds we never expected. It was worse than
worse than anything you've seen?
Anything before. You were worth a baby compared to
But did you have fear that the house was going to go or collapse?
The second floor, probably, not the house.
And that sort of happened?
Yes, exactly.
Incredible. Yeah. Good going.
Thank you for being here.
And
Well,
the president's here with the administrator. FEMA's going to come over here with the efforts to rebuild, so we'll make it get back again.
That's what we hope.
All right.
thank you very much.
Qué bueno, and your governor and your mayor have done really a fantastic job. Thank you.
Yes, it is.
Thank you very much. Good luck with everything. Good luck. Take care of yourself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Buen play, Puerto Rico. Gracias por su servicio.
Gracias por recibirnos aquí.
No, siempre a la orden.
Bendiciones, bendiciones.